Hello, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Red Dot Forum Camera Talk. As always, I am co-host David Farkas. I am joined by Josh Lehrer.
Evening, everybody.
Over there, we've got Jose in the little box.
Hello, hello.
Producing the show, reading off your questions. And we've got a great show for you tonight. Sorry for the big break, but we did have this thing called the holidays that is all-consuming for the entire world.
Yes.
And we are not immune to that.
Yeah.
That is our kind of scrambling, busiest time of the year. So
yes,
we are much, much more relaxed now.
We are?
We're supposed to be much more relaxed now.
Didn't get that memo.
Yes. So hopefully everyone had a great holiday. Got to spend time with family and friends and loved ones. And welcome back.
And Happy New Year.
And Happy
New Year. Still allowed to say that because it's still January.
It's still January. So
right.
Happy New Year. Happy 2025, everyone. We made it a quarter century in. Amazing.
That's right.
All right. Tonight,
yes,
we have an exciting product that just launched on Thursday. Today is Saturday. So it's very timely and amazingly coincidental that we were able to do a show. We already had a show scheduled and Leica was launching a product. We're like, that's great.
Right. That's how you know we don't know about stuff that comes out ahead of time, because half the time we don't have a show scheduled anywhere near a launch. And then sometimes we get lucky and like this. And of course, the downside to that is that means we only have like a day and a half to learn everything there is to know.
Yes.
But that's okay because we're excited. So David, tell us and our viewers, what are we talking about tonight?
We're talking about this camera right here, which is very stealthy, as you can see. It's got a red dot, but it is otherwise blacked out. So we are talking about this, the new camera, which was just announced on Thursday, the 16th. This is the SL3-S.
Cool. All right. Good night, everybody. We're good.
Great show, guys. All right. Amazing.
That's it.
All right.
That's a lot of work for that.
Yeah, I'll give you the rundown. All right. So the SL3-S.
Well, before you do that,
yes,
give us a little bit of context. Why? Because this is not the first time we've seen something dash S.
It's not.
So before we dive into, I know you're excited. Before we dive into what's new,
yes,
I think it's important, especially if people are coming from other systems, to understand what does it mean to have a dash S model in the SL line.
Well, the S will say it stands for speed.
Sure,
why not? Let's go with that.
Okay.
I think that's even Leica's kind of marketing push around this camera this week that we've seen is, the fastest Leica camera ever made.
Yeah.
And built for speed and whatever. Okay. Essentially, let's back up a few years here, right? We're going to back up 4 years. I think it was 4 years ago.
It was 2021, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had the SL2 launch previous fall in 2019. So the SL2 was out for a year.
Yeah.
Great camera, one of my favorites of all time. I have to just say that because I used that camera consistently for 4.5, almost 5 years solid for every single landscape trip I took for that period of time. And the thing was a tank. Yeah. So about a year into the product life cycle of the SL2, there was kind of a, I guess, feedback, demand, whatever, where because we had come from the SL601, with the first SL at 24 megapixel. And people really loved that. It kind of hit a sweet spot. And if you remember, Leica had all their M cameras at 24 megapixels for how many generations?
2.
But it was a lot of
but for years, right?
It's like 10 years.
How many years you have asked for? Yes, for almost 10 years. Yeah,
right. Okay, so we had a lot, 2 generations. So it was across 2 M platforms, which had multiple models in between. If you want to learn more about that, we have a 15 years of digital M episode.
That's right.
Two-part.
Yes.
You can check out.
Yes.
But basically, a lot of people really got used to that 24 megapixel. It hit a sweet spot in terms of performance and aperture range and all that. And the SL2 came along and doubled the pixels, right? We went from 24 to 47, pretty much a doubling in resolution. It was pretty significant. And there was a lot of changes with that generation. We had in-body image stabilization, a huge upgraded EVF, much faster processing, just a redesigned body and all that. And it was a big step up from where we were with the original SL to the SL2.
Yeah.
And there were some people who said, I don't really need the resolution, and it's not the best in low light, and it's not the best for video, and I want to do event photography or action photography or video projects. What do you got for us?
Yeah.
And they came out with the SL2-S, which utilized a 24 megapixel BSI sensor. And was that the first time Leica used a BSI sensor? I think it was.
Because the M10R had one. No?
No, I'm pretty sure.
It all blurs together. It was one of the first, if not the first.
I think it was the first BSI sensor that's backside illuminated sensor, which, again, I just have to keep saying this. Anytime I say backside illuminated, I have to explain because it does not mean there's light coming in from behind the sensor like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It just means that the supporting electronics, all the little microelectronics that go to support each pixel to provide power and whatever, all those are usually traditionally sitting on the face of the sensor where the photosensitive area gets reduced so that these microstructures can be around it. And then there's a lens over that, but that makes the pixel itself smaller and less light sensitive. So BSI utilizes the full area of the pixel well, moves those electronics to the back of the sensor. I don't know who came up with illuminated. Like, did it just...
There's some engineering reason probably.
Anyway, it just means the electronics are on the back side of the sensor rather than on the surface, making it much bigger pixels for the same number of pixels on the sensor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it was the SL2S. I just checked.
It was the SL2S.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Jose. Yeah, so the fancy engineering term for that is it increased the quantum efficiency of the pixels. It just means they're more light sensitive. And that means lower noise, higher usable high ISO. So on the SL2, I'd say it was limited to about 3200 to 6400 for optimal results.
Yeah.
And then we see the SL2S come along and like 50,000. 25,000.
It was wild. We have an episode on it, so you could watch
do.
that. And of course, we do our obligatory comparisons and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then that got a lot of video features. In fact, as we say, you're sitting in the studio. Well, we're sitting in the studio. You're watching us sitting in the studio. But you are watching us right now on an SL2S. And these overhead cameras that we have for close-ups are SL2Ss. They never leave the studio. They are our dedicated video cameras. And I can also say, Jose, I'm going to call you out. You use an SL2S quite often, right?
That's correct, yeah. I've had it for, I don't know, like 3 years now, I think. And it's great for both photo and video. Yeah, I mean, I love it.
Right, and Gabe, who is our trainer, he had an SL2 and he went to an SL2S, again, because he's shooting people, he's shooting events. So there is a crossover. And then Colin, who's one of our workshop instructors, he just, last month, bought himself a reporter, right?
Yeah, SL2S reporter, yeah. Yep.
And that's his favorite camera because he's our main astrophotography instructor. And he absolutely loves the SL2S for astrophotography. It's because it's just right. You can get, if you do the math with photo pills, if you have too long of an exposure with too many pixels, you see star movement. So 24 for him is a sweet spot. And it's just so low noise that it's fantastic for astrophotography, right? So that brings us to today.
Yes, finally.
Amazing, right? So here we are, 4 years on, and a lot of people said, will there be an S model of the SL3?
Right, so backing up a little bit, once the SL3 came out and it started to get into the market, that's the question that started to get asked. Because now, like established a precedent with the SL2 coming out with the SL2S, and of course everybody, including ourselves, wondered, would we see an SL3S and what would it be like? And that question has now been answered.
Right.
Because on Thursday, as David said, Leica launched the SL3S. And the coolest part, I think, about this is that they stayed at 24 megapixels.
They did.
With the S. So we're not they're not cramming more pixels on there. They're not trying to compete with the SL3. The cameras really have a pretty wide gulf in between them in terms of resolution. And I think it helps make it easier to decide which one will be right for a given task.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, so in your mind, what do you think that I mean, I guess we kind of explained a lot of that with the SL2 versus SL2, SL2 versus SL2S explanation.
Yes.
But what do you think now that we have the SL3? And the SL3 brought about some notable improvements in autofocus.
Yeah, it was...
Right, because we have now, the SL3 introduced the hybrid phase, contrast, and object detect autofocus.
Correct.
So do we need a better focusing camera?
So one of the big highlighting features, and we're probably going to break up this video in some sense between stills features and video features.
Let's do stills first.
But we're going to start with stills, yeah. one of the biggest changes is a dramatic improvement in autofocus performance. And this is simply because there are more autofocus points on the sensor.
Yes.
So that is a hardware change, because I know, we'll address this again later on, but I know one of the many questions we received is, will Leica incorporate the autofocus improvements that were found in the SL3S via firmware in the SL3? The answer was going to be no,
Right.
because there are hardware differences in the SL3S that allow, it's what, 2.4 times as many focus points?
Yep.
Yeah.
2.4 times the amount of focus points and that's from the SL3
Yeah.
to the SL3S. Even though there's less pixels,
Yes.
there's almost 300% more autofocus points.
And in shooting static subjects, you're not really going to notice a difference because the cameras are already so quick. Where you'll notice the difference is shooting things in motion, whether that's going to be people, wildlife, vehicles, animals, whatever. That's really where the difference is going to be made. So for sports photographers, action photographers, wildlife photographers, event photographers, wedding photographers, we have talked about this before.
Yes.
Autofocus tracking and continuous autofocus is the biggest area where Leica is lagging behind.
It has been, yeah.
And we don't have a problem admitting that because it's true.
Yep.
And no one company can do everything, the best of everything. And even Leica themselves has said, like, yes, we have room to grow. But if you look at how far they've come in 10 years between the SL601 and now the SL3S, like if you pick up an SL601 and try to shoot action with it,
Yeah.
and then you do that with an SL3S, you'll be like, okay, now I get it.
I still remember back in the day when you and I
Yeah.
were trying to do action photos with it. And we're like,
Yes.
yeah.
It was tough. I mean, you could work with it. It just wasn't up to par.
And in fairness, it did actually improve considerably with firmware upgrades.
Oh, for sure. And that's something Leica is very good at. And we know we talk about this to death all the time. But the SL3S represents the current autofocus flagship for Leica.
Yes.
It is a significant enhancement from the SL3. Now, because we've only had the camera for a day and a half, I have not been able to do proper autofocus testing, which of course we will do in a second part of this series. We've done some sort of informal testing, and we've talked with some of our early adopting customers who've been able to play with it. So we have to.
And I think it's worth noting there's another hardware difference, not just the autofocus points.
Yes.
Right? So yeah, we have the 775 autofocus points, but also the sense, and this sort of is, we'll come back to this for video, but part of the reason that the SL3S has such significant upgrades for video and some serious video chops is because that sensor is different. And it is a very fast readout sensor. And that's necessary in order to do the kind of video and maintain the kind of bandwidth. I'll just say right now, it does 6K open gate, which means the full sensor, no cropping.
Yeah.
It also has, we haven't done specific testing, we will, as to the rolling shutter effect, but from anecdotally and just from a quick few samples we've shot, it is significantly less rolling shutter effect, and that's because the sensor is so fast.
Yeah.
So when you have a fast sensor paired with a fast processor, which is the Maestro IV, along with those phase detection autofocus points and the object detect AI and all that, it's a significant jump in performance, but it is hardware related. So I don't think that this is going to make it via firmware to the SL3, and absolutely not into the SL2 generation because the sensor doesn't have phase detection. It only has contrast detection.
Correct. Yeah. So this is, if you want the autofocus performance, if you're doing that kind of photography, you need to get an SL3S.
Yeah.
Because the SL3, I'm sure the SL3 will continue to improve with firmware over time. We'll talk about that later. But the focusing technology is in the hardware, and that's maybe an SL4 in 5 years. But I love to see Leica doing these big changes in their sort of mid-cycle products because it kind of shows that they're continuously improving not just little things and software updates, but actually doing major hardware changes. I think the M10R was a great example of that.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, totally
even the M10P.
For sure. I mean, huge feature changes. So
New shutter, new binder.
we always say, like, what could Leica do next? You know, this is so good, that's so good. And then suddenly they go, oh, by the way, here's this way sooner than you expected because SL3 hasn't even been a year.
No.
It's been, I was like 10 months.
It's a really short cycle.
So that's pretty cool.
From my understanding, these were developed in parallel with each other.
Yeah.
Which is unusual because normally in a mid-cycle camera, they would 100% focus on one camera, then move on to the next one.
Yeah.
I think the SL3S was started prior to the SL3 launch, and they were sort of doing them in concert together.
That makes sense.
Which, and you can see the kind of that synergistic relationship between them. So
Yeah, so I think one thing I should mention is that the SL3 and the SL3S share the same body. So visually, the only difference is that the SL3S doesn't have the white infill on the front, similar to the SL2S. Otherwise, these cameras look exactly the same. That means
On the back,
tripod plates, half cases, hand grips, thumb
all the
supports, thumbs up, all these, every single thing, memory cards are all going to fit across both cameras because they are exactly the same body, just to make that clear.
Before we move on,
Yes.
I do want to I want to give flowers, so to speak, to Leica for 1 second.
Feel free.
While I agree, they have been lagging in terms of the continuous autofocus tracking ever since Leica came out with their very first autofocus modern camera, which is
The S2.
The S2. What have they been exceptionally good at? Better than anyone else. Not necessarily speed, but from the very beginning, and this is going back all the way to 2009, accuracy. Every single iteration of Leica autofocus camera, whether that was all the 4 generations of the S camera, whether it was any of the Q cameras or the SLs, every single one had the most reliable, repeatable, and accurate autofocus system of any camera out. And that still holds true today. So I think it's doing Leica a disservice to downplay their accomplishments with autofocus. And I think that's just goes to their German engineering roots. They don't want to do something if they can't do it perfectly.
Yeah.
And now we've gotten to the point where we can get that autofocus perfection because of that hybrid system, having the accuracy of contrast detection with the speed of phase detection.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that before we move on. And now, before we really move on, Jose, I see a lot of comments there.
Well, I
Is
don't know if
there
there's
anything that we need to address so far?
No, I mean, we have questions, but do you want to take them now, or you want to?
Well, I think we first should continue to introduce what new features we have in the
Sure.
S3S.
All right,
we need to highlight it. So I'll talk about some more still features. Something else we have now in the S3S, which we first saw in the M11P, is the Content Credentials feature, where it's a hardware chip. So this is not done in software. A hardware chip which will write particular metadata that you assign to your file that cannot be modified. And in the age where AI-generated images continues to expand and it's harder to tell what's real and what's not, especially in the sort of photojournalism documentary side of things, that technology allows images to be verified to ensure they're authentic. We're just seeing this technology in its infancy. It's not super widely supported yet, but obviously everything has to start somewhere.
Yeah, in fact, if you see in Lightroom exports now, there's a whole content authentication module. Because this push is spearheaded by Adobe. And Adobe has created this standard for the Content Authentication Initiative. And Leica, just like Leica was the first to join the DNG consortium with, again, spearheaded by Adobe, and all of the raw files since have been DNGs. And other companies have come along now into the DNG space, the digital negative. Leica is also the first to make that investment and get on board with the Content Authentication Initiative as well.
So now
there is hundreds of companies.
Yeah, this is the first autofocus camera Leica's done with the Content Authentication Initiative technology, and I'm sure that will continue over time. So far, we have M11P, M11D, and SL3S. So just to lay that out. Another change that we see in the SL3S is the addition of ISO 200,000. For those of you doing a lot of spelunking with your SL3Ss. Yes, I don't know. Not that ISO 200,000 is super usable, but I guess with like AI denoising and yada, 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 sure. But it just gives you an idea of what Leica's sort of threshold for performance is for low light when they put that setting there.
Right, because the SL2S topped out at 100,000.
Yes.
So this is 100,000 more.
Yes.
Because math.
We were limited in the SL3 to autofocus at, I think, 5 frames per second.
It's not.
Make sure I get that number right.
Well, no, that's the SL2S.
That's the same thing though, right?
Nope. And the SL3?
Hold on a second. Anyway, we can do up to 30 frames per second with autofocus with the SL3S. So that's a huge change. Where's the SL3?
I have them both.
Go check right now so I make sure I give the people the right data.
No, this is right. Oh, you mean the SL3?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I can't remember what it was on the SL3. That's why
I'll tell you.
I'm like, I should have remembered that. But there's a lot of numbers.
I will tell you.
Anyway, but now, for those of you who are shooting something moving really, really, really fast, you can shoot 30 frames a second. I remember when 10 frames a second was really fast, and that wasn't that long ago. So I don't know what anyone's going to do with 30 FPS, but more power to you if you can figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Here, if you want to see the overhead camera.
Yeah. But you lost it.
Here we go. So under continue. Okay, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, can we show that, Jose? Is that in focus? Kind of.
Sorry. So big red. Okay, the red cable was a bad
You're doing
idea.
great. You're doing great over there. There we go. Okay.
All right. So you can see here, I do like Leica's new interface because it's very descriptive. It tells you everything you need to know. So under continuous shooting, this is an SL3. You'll notice 2 frames per second, 4 frames per second, 5 frames per second. The files drop to 12-bit from 14-bit. And you can see we've got autofocus. But then when we go to 6 frames per second, no more autofocus, no AF, okay? And if we look at the new SL3-S,
Oh, memory card, sorry.
that's all right. I forgive you.
Thank you.
Okay, we go to drive mode here. We go to continuous shooting. Oh, am I in focus?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. And you can see 2 frames per second, 14-bit, 5, 14-bit, 7, 12-bit. So we do drop to 12, 7, 15, and 30, all with autofocus on every single option.
That's a big change because you can now shoot super, super fast burst speeds and maintain autofocus as your subject is moving throughout the frame. Okay.
Which is amazing.
The other big still photography feature that we have in the SL3S that we lost in the jump from the SL2 to the SL3 is multi-shot. So the SL2 had that, although it wasn't launched with it. It was introduced in firmware maybe a year.
It was a lot, more than a year. Yeah.
So now, then we got it in the SL2S. We lost it in the SL3, and now we have multi-shot again. So now you can actually generate a 96 megapixel DNG file or a 48 megapixel JPEG if you want something smaller, using just the sensor in the camera. You don't need any extra stuff.
Which is amazing because any other implementation I've seen,
Yes, and
you have to compile it after the fact.
now not only do you have multi-shot, but if you remember, if you've used multi-shot on the SL2 or the SL3,
I can show.
if you even breathed on the camera, it
There we go.
would flash you a warning light and wouldn't allow you to take a photo because it was so sensitive to motion. Well, the SL3S introduces a handheld mode for their multi-shot, so you can actually now do handheld multi-shot images.
Yes.
I have not tested this thoroughly yet. I'm dying to find out how well it works. The reality is that I don't personally need that kind of resolution for what I do, although I think it's super cool, especially if you're doing situations where you are going to print large and you need that extra resolution.
I'm trying to find multi-shot on the SL3. I'm like, where is it?
That'll do
it's
it.
not here. It's not here.
So anyway, the addition of multi-shot is welcome because when the SL3 came out, we had a lot of people ask, where did multi-shot go? And I think Leica's logic was 60 megapixels was probably enough.
Yeah.
If you had to do multi-shot on a 60 meg sensor, you're talking, what, 240 megapixels?
Math.
4x, yeah, whatever, a lot. So now we have the ability to shoot a 96 megapixel DNG on the SL3S either, and there's actually 2 modes for the multi-shot setting. There's a tripod mode and a handheld mode. So it's pretty cool. You can actually use it as a walk-around 96 megapixel camera, albeit you're a little bit limited in how fast the things are moving you can shoot. And again, these are tests that I need to do, which I haven't done yet. I think
Yes,
in
4 times.
Okay. I think in reality, most people, although correct me if I'm wrong, using multi-shot are using it for landscape, architecture, fine art reproduction, sort of tripod mounted situations. I don't know handheld wise.
Well, I'll give you a use case.
You give me a use case.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a use case because this happens. So let's say we're out on an astrophotography trip.
Okay.
And we've got an SL3S. And, we're set up on a tripod and we're shooting astro. And let's say it also depends when you're shooting astro is either you're showing up, let's say around sunset and then you're waiting until it gets dark enough. Or depending where the stars are, you might actually go out like really early, shoot while it's dark, and then up until sunrise. We've kind of done both of those depending on the location and where the Milky Way is relative to the Earth. Well, I can tell you so often you're walking by a beautiful sunset or you're walking back to the car with a beautiful sunrise. And you're like, oh man, but you don't want to get out the tripod. You're tired. You've been shooting all night. It's like, you know what? Why don't I just put this in multi-shot?
Yeah.
Hold still, click, 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 and you're like, amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Right.
So there you go. So because I think there will be some situations where you'll want to have an SL3 and an SL3S, and the multi-shot offsets that to some degree.
Yeah, I
not
think so.
entirely by any means, but to some degree. And certainly in that situation, I think makes a lot of sense.
Definitely.
So multi-shot is the other big change that we had, and I think that's it for still photo. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Yeah, faster autofocus, autofocus at 30 frames per second, multi-shot, content credentials. All the other functions from a stills perspective are the same as the SL3. The menu interface is the same, which is that new UI that we saw when the SL3 came out.
There is, I mean, not I don't think people will use this,
Okay.
but it's worth mentioning. You can now, I mean, this is more important for video,
Okay.
but it does apply to photos.
Sure.
Which is if you have an SSD, like one of these, right? Here's a Samsung, here's a SanDisk, and you got USB-C connector. You can plug this into the camera. It will record video directly onto the SSD, but you can also record photos on there. And I was wondering, I was like, why would that matter? Because possibly, and the other photo thing that we didn't talk about is the buffer depth, which is very impressive.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to do a very long intervalometer,
Okay.
you could actually plug a drive in USB-C if you might be just filling the thing up. If you're going to shoot it for a long period of time. And
Cool.
because we have, oh, you didn't bring a dummy battery?
No.
If you have the little DC power coupler, AKA the dummy battery, you could keep that powered for an extremely long time off a big battery bank. So if you wanted to do, say, like a 3-day or 4-day time lapse, you'd have enough space on a 2 terabyte SSD to do, a shot every second or 2 seconds or whatever, and you'd have the power if you were plugged into like a big Goal Zero or whatever anchor power supply. So it's kind of an edge case.
Yeah.
But it is cool.
It's cool, yeah.
And we should talk about the buffer because it is insane.
Well, let me mention one thing first that's important, is we had plenty of questions before the show, and we're going to get plenty of questions tonight. I've already seen some, which essentially start with, will Leica do blah, blah, blah? Like, will there be handheld multi-shot in the SL2? Will there be better autofocus in the SL3? And the reality is we do not know what Leica has planned for the future unless Leica tells it publicly. They don't really give us super secret insight like that. So the reality is, we don't know what Leica has planned for future firmware updates. So they certainly have a long history of doing big updates, even on models that are not necessarily current.
Yeah, check back in mid-December, they issued all.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. We can't answer any of those questions because we don't know. We don't know if Leica is going to do or what Leica is going to do in the future with regards to hardware, software, firmware, or whatever. We certainly have our wish list, a lot of which we covered 2 years ago now in our wish list episode. I can't believe that was.
I mean, full transparency, when we have met with engineers from headquarters from Germany and product managers, believe us, I mean, we are like, I feel bad for them. Like, we just bombard them with everything. We're like, oh, but it would be really cool if it did this. And also, can you do this and this? And they're just like,
I'm like, why are you taking notes? These are important.
They're like, yeah, we know. It's like, we've heard this. Yeah. Or sometimes it's, really? You think people would want that? And you're like, yes, do it.
Well, a huge example of that is they added the ability to format your memory card via the Photos app in your M11D.
Yep.
When we aired our episode about that, you couldn't do it.
Correct.
And they got tons of user feedback, and they did it. So that's a great example of Leica actually paying attention to what customers want, which I love.
Yeah.
So anyway, I wanted to mention that, but Dave, you want to talk about buffer depth real quick?
Yeah, amazing. So basically, can you bring up the spec though? Because there's a lot of different levels.
You want to do the compared, or you want to do tech specs?
And tech specs, yeah. There it is.
Here we go.
So if you're shooting at 2 frames per second, 1,000 DNGs.
Not enough, sorry. I want a new camera.
If you're shooting at 5 frames a second, 1,000 DNGs. If you're shooting at 7 frames per second, only 680 DNGs. And 15 frames per second, you're down to 175. And 30 frames per second, interestingly, is also 175. That's a lot of pictures.
Yeah, it's about 6 seconds of 30 frames per second.
Bang!
And that's a long time, but it's hold the shutter down and take 100. That's 100 images you're going to have to go through afterwards and look at all the things. I don't know what your photograph, horse racing maybe or something.
Maybe.
I think you can see short bursts.
Right.
But for me, it's just nice that you don't have to worry about hitting the buffer in a real world scenario because I'd probably be at 7 frames per second for most of what I do.
Sure.
And it's nice that I can rattle off 30, 40 frames in a streak without having to hit the buffer. So
I mean, if you're shooting 7 frames per second, that means you can shoot for 1.5 minutes, like just straight on at 7 frames per second. Think about that. Think about that for a second.
Yeah, that's wild.
Okay.
That's wild. I don't know who needs that, but
somebody.
I'll take it.
But it also means that if you're firing off fast bursts, the buffer is going to clear very, very quickly. It's super high speed, and then if you're using, which should be really, I don't know if you can see that, but maybe here.
There you go.
There. Nope, there. You should be using this. I have switched from SD cards to the Compact Flash Express Type B, which is this one here. This is one of the Lexar cards. This is only 1,700 megabytes per second. To put that in perspective, the fastest UHS-2 cards, SD cards, are maybe like 200 megabytes per second, 250. So this is just absolutely demolishes SD cards. So if you are going to be shooting high burst rate, this is going to write so much faster. The buffer will clear. You'll be able to keep shooting. It does have an 8 gigabyte buffer, so it's pretty sizable.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people don't think about this. This is one of the advantages of using Compact Flash Express. It is kind of a chunky looking reader here.
Okay.
But this reader is one I've been using. It's a Lexar reader, and it's got a really heavy-duty, high-speed Thunderbolt cable on it. So this will transfer at 1,700 to up to some cards are faster. So this will actually go 2,000 megabytes a second, which is absurd. It basically means that it's actually fast. This is faster than this. These are only about 1,000.
I'm looking at our table. It was so clean when we started, and you just ruined everything.
Just cover it with a camera.
Not me, I swear.
Just cover it with a camera.
I used to get like a little cloth and just kind of cover this up.
Anyway, so yeah, this card, to support that, the interface and the processing inside the camera is extremely fast because it really can keep pace with these cards.
That's why there's a hot card warning on the camera.
There actually is.
Yes.
Well, this is metal on the back, right? So if you grab this after you've been doing a 30-second burst, you probably will burn your fingers.
There's got to be special like oven mitts that they sell. So when you're doing like fast bursts, you put on your special like oven mitt, and then you take the card out of the camera.
Absolutely.
I think we're new red dot wear item. I think.
Now I do want to say, okay, for the sports people, for the ones shooting bursts, if you're shooting car racing, right, and the cars are like, right, so you need, and then they're gone. Yeah. Right, and then the next group of cars. But you don't want that buffer to just be blinking while something's happening. Right. So that's for the action people. I would say in my universe, because I've seen this happen even on the SL2S. Colin, my colleague there, was doing an intervalometer shooting because it's so cool when you do an intervalometer all night and the Milky Way is moving, because it moves like this through the sky as the Earth is rotating, and it just looks amazing. But what was happening on his SL2S is it was hitting the buffer, and it's just like, and it would hit the buffer, and then the intervalometer would stop, and you're like, are you kidding me? Yeah. And then that's it. You can't recover. You have to start a whole new sequence. And of course, the Milky Way already is here, not there. So you can't, can you go back? Let's turn back to the rotation of the Earth. So having a 1,000 image buffer means that you could do as long an intervalometer as you want. So I think for time-lapse photography, especially for astro time-lapse, I think this is going to be the right move for that.
So let me ask you a question, because I just want to sort of focus on the still side for now, right? I think this question a lot of people are going to ask. Let's say you don't have an SL camera. This would be your first one.
Then I'd be lying.
No. Finish.
Okay, wait. I got you. Okay, yeah, go.
And you're only going to shoot stills.
Yes.
You're not going to shoot video.
Yes.
What's going to help you decide, or how are you going to decide between an SL3 and an SL3S? I want to hear what you say, and then we'll see what I say to that. So again, this is if you don't have one. We'll get to the next part later.
What kind of photographs do I take?
Okay, but what functionality is going to dictate that?
Okay, the functionality is, let's say if I'm shooting static subjects where I need high resolution, i.e. landscape photography, architectural photography, fine art photography, I'm going to gravitate to the SL3.
Okay.
If I need something that's going to be as fast as possible and amazing with moving subjects for, let's say, wildlife photography, sports photography, event photography, automotive, anything like that where you're doing action, or you need a lot of volume. Again, which brings me back to sports photographers, event photographers, right? If you show up to a wedding, do you think that you want to take 60 megapixel dance floor photos? I mean, thank goodness, I will say the SL3 has the triple resolution sensor, so you can shoot 18 megapixel dance floor photos and it's probably going to be fine. But you're still going to suffer the autofocus, and you won't have that exceptionally good high ISO capability that we get in the SL3S.
Well, we'll get to that.
We will get to that.
But I think for me, for stills, the highlighting feature is the improved autofocus. If you're only shooting, as David said, static subjects, it's not going to make a difference in your life. I mean, I agree with everything you just said.
Okay.
So I think the SL3 sensor is better. Let me just say that now.
Sure.
It has more resolution, more dynamic range. It's a better sensor, but that's okay because we have an SL3. We don't have to worry about it.
Right.
What the SL3S gives you is, like David says, is the ability to capture action and events in a way you could do better with the SL3 than the SL2. But now you can do even better with the SL3S, and the difference is pretty significant.
Yeah.
So I think we were just, Jose was just talking with one of our customers who's a wedding and events photographer just yesterday, who just picked up his SL3S, coming from an SL3 and an SL2 and an SL2S, and also from other brands.
And he shot with it last night.
I shot with it last night, just blown away by the speed. Now, I'm dying to talk to him next week to find out more. I wish I could have chatted with him before the show, but
Jose, what was the general feeling that he said? Because you're the one who talked with him.
Yeah, it wasn't it wasn't much, but it was basically the autofocus obviously made a big improvement.
Yeah, because
just
he had
the autofocus
concerns.
speed for sure. Yeah,
I know about the SL3 for what he was shooting, which is all moving, like kids running around and weddings and stuff. So, if you're shooting that kind of work, yes, get an SL3S. If you're not, get an SL3, because ultimately the SL3 has better static image quality. Now the SL3 the SL3S has multi-shot, but it's just going to give you slightly more resolution. It's not going to change the dynamic range or the other characteristics.
yeah.
So I personally would still, if I needed resolution, would still gravitate towards an SL3. I wouldn't lean on the multi-shot on the SL3S because there are limitations there, like if your subject is moving, if you need exposures longer than 1 second.
Exactly.
If you're doing images quick, because multi-shot takes time, so if you're shooting quickly, you can't get that with the multi-shot. So the SL3S having multi-shot gives it an added level of functionality, like David said, which we didn't have with the SL3, so I appreciate that for sure. But I think it's just like when the SL2S came out, initially there's a little bit of confusion as to why you would go with one or the other, but I like now that there's some pretty big, clear differentiators. And also if you need the content authentication technology. If you're a working photographer and you need that tech for your job, or you're going to need it going down the road, obviously the SL3S is the way to go. My question is now, if you have an SL2,
Okay.
and you want to upgrade,
Okay. An SL2 or an SL2S?
either or. I mean, it's going to be, I guess, the same logic probably, right?
Kind of.
And of course, I would probably get whatever the opposite is. So if I had an SL2S, I'd probably get an SL3. If I had an SL2, I may get an SL3S, depending on what I was doing and if I was going to keep it. Because having an SL2 or SL2S as a backup is super
Amazing.
handy. Yeah.
Well, I think that's, I just have to say, like, currently used value, and this could change from when you watch the video, but used values of SL2s, I mean, it's like highway robbery right now.
They're really cheap right now. SL2s, SL2Ss, there's a lot of them out there.
If I didn't already have an SL2, and I'll just give full disclosure here, right? So I have been using the SL3 as my primary tool now, especially for landscape photography, for the last 6 months. On all those trips, I have taken the SL2 as backup.
Yeah.
I still have my SL2. And I'm not really inclined to get rid of it because the values aren't super high. And if I look at it and say, because what's a used SL2 now? 2,500?
Or less. Yeah.
Or less?
Yeah.
If I look at that and say, wow, I could get that. Let's say I didn't have anything. I could get that for $2,500 as a backup. It's like, that's kind of a no-brainer.
Well, one of the things we didn't talk about with the S3S was the price point.
How much is it?
SL3 is $69.95. SL3S is $52.95.
$1,700.
So there's a big price difference, which is nice. Normally, like if they're coming out with another model, it's the same price or more. Or if it's less money, you get less features. I think that's something you were talking about, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was kind of noting this, reflecting back on the SL2S, and the same is true today, which is when the SL2S came out, I guess there was some thinking, because it was kind of unprecedented from Leica to come out with a lower resolution model.
Right.
And a lot of people say, oh, it's like an entry-level model, it's downgraded.
Right.
And the reality is, it didn't lose any features from the SL2. It just changed the sensor out for one that was better in low light, better for video, better for action. And they didn't strip away anything from it. So far from being an entry-level model, and here with the SL3 to the SL3S, if anything, actually, we were talking about this, there are actually more features in an SL3S than an SL3.
Yeah, there are. I mean,
which is
between the autofocus,
crazy.
the burst depth, the multi-shot, and the CAI, the SL3S has technically more features than the SL3, which is cool.
But it's still $1,700 less.
There you go. And that is significant.
It is,
that pays for part of a lens right there. So, or a whole lens, depending on which way you go. So I think for me,
almost an SL2.
Yeah, these days, yeah. So if I had an SL2 or an SL2S, I don't think I would get rid of it to get an SL3 or an SL3S personally. I mean, obviously everyone's budget's going to be different, and we work with people all the time who do their trades and some people who don't. It's all good. But I think that aside, there's a lot of value, especially since they share the same battery and the same lenses and a lot of other things.
Well, let's talk in more specific use case. And this maybe on the photo side, maybe there's not enough reason to go from an SL2S to an SL3S. Maybe, unless you're shooting wildlife, unless you're shooting action.
Right.
It very well may be important. But from the video side, I think this is an entirely new generation of camera.
Well, why don't
we need to talk about that.
Why don't we do video? I think we should do video, and then we'll show some samples.
Yeah.
Well, we'll do video, we'll do questions. See how we plan this ahead of time? No, we didn't. It's okay.
We're planning it right now.
You're watching the process in action. This is like...
All right, let me get the whiteboard.
Okay, hold on. Let's go outside for a second now. We'll do video, which is going to be your thing.
Okay.
And then the only thing I know about video is Be Kind Rewind. So...
they don't have that anymore.
No, they don't? No. Oh my gosh, I'm on a date.
Wait, should we do a few questions first before the video?
Sure.
You're probably right. Okay, so
Let's
questions.
do photo-related questions
Yeah,
first.
photo-related questions, then your video stuff, then I'll show some samples,
Yeah.
and then we'll all take it down.
Yeah.
I love that.
Because a lot of the questions were answered, but let's just still,
Come on.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's see. Is this the same sensor as the SL2S?
No.
No.
Okay.
Same resolution.
But again, if they took this SL2S sensor, they wouldn't be able to do the video features because it's hardware differences.
Yeah.
It's not the same sensor.
There we go.
Yeah. There are a couple of, can the SL3 receive the same improvements in autofocus?
Right, which we don't know.
Same thing with the Q3.
Well, that we know. I'm saying, we don't. What we don't know is what Leica's going to do. What we do know is that
What they can't do.
right, they can't change the hardware in this. Well, I guess they could, but they won't. That's SL4 territory.
Q3S?
Perfect. Don't get people started, dude. No.
Q3.
Keep them going. Jose.
Would a really right stuff L plate from an SL2S fit an SL3S?
No.
Okay.
There were some questions on we got ahead of time too on the OneDrive, Jose.
Okay, yeah.
You can ask some of those if you want.
Is there a pre-capture feature?
No.
Is there a focus tagging macro feature?
No.
No.
Okay.
Although that's something we have requested, but no.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then there's a question regarding video, which we're gonna go over now.
We'll get over that. Yep.
And then let me see. How does the SL3S compare to the SL3 when it's set to a lower resolution? I think we're gonna show that.
Joshua has
That
samples
as
for that.
well.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Are the two bodies then almost identical?
They are.
They are the same body. I'm just the paint in the top.
And then again, questions about low light performance with the SL3S.
Get to that.
We'll get to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the ones that we didn't answer, we're gonna show or
Yeah.
talk about the video and the new features, and then how does the sensor compare to the 24 megapixel sensor of the M10 for stills?
Totally different sensor.
Yeah.
I
The
mean,
big gulf there.
I mean, if I had to guess, it's a whole new. You're talking about a traditional CMOS versus a BSI CMOS, and I think you can kind of answer that question of taking a look at how did the M10 compare to the SL2S. I would say image quality wise, and Josh, you can probably speak to this later when we look at samples, but it's probably pretty similar, right?
Yeah, I think the 24 megapixel sweet spot hasn't really changed much. You're seeing like a little more dynamic range, a little bit more malleability in the files, but we're not fundamentally changing the way that the images look.
It's not gonna be like, wow, that's so much sharper at the exact same amount of pixels.
Yeah. That's fine because this doesn't need to get any.
It's physics.
Yeah.
It's physics.
Somebody asked if does the drop in 12-bit, the drop from 14-bit to 12-bit hurt a lot? I would say no, because generally what you're shooting when you're in those burst modes are things that don't necessitate that extra little bit of super intense editing, because where you're going to notice the difference in bit depth is like sunset skies, like lots of gradation, super complicated landscape scenes, or doing art reproduction. But for the things that you're going to be in 12-bit for, which is going to be like action, those are generally not scenes that require that type of heavy-handed editing. Yeah. So I have not seen a difference.
And it means you're going to basically drop from 15 stops to 14 stops of dynamic range.
I mean, there is a difference,
amazing.
but I haven't seen in what I'm doing with those burst mode images. I haven't seen a difference in the results. What else? Someone
Is
else.
the shutter closed when the camera's turned off feature?
Oh, I wish. That's so annoying. I would totally agree with you. I mean, if you're listening to Leica, please give us the dust protection feature we got on the M11P.
They've done it in the past.
I know. No, honestly, I was just today, like doing my testing, like switching lenses back and forth outside in a parking garage. I'm like trying to whatever. So whoever.
But it does have the little dust shaking mode.
Okay, fine, but that barely works for the messes that I cause.
But it makes noise, and it's like,
oh, right, it's super cool. But I would love to have that feature. Maybe they'll do it one day. Maybe there's a reason they can't do it. I don't know, but
who knows?
Handheld multi-shot firmware on the SL2.
We don't know. That'd be cool, but I doubt it.
It may not be possible because of the increase. Remember, SL2 to SL3 generationally went from a Maestro 3 to a Maestro 4, and it's a big jump in processing power. It's sort of like, sometimes if your computer is a little older, it can't run, new AI algorithms or something. This is kind of similar.
Yeah. What else?
SL2S was promised to have timecode, which was later removed from the website. Does the SL3S finally getting one?
Yes, we'll go over that in video features. Yep.
Okay.
What about the ones we got on OneDrive, Jose?
I read them.
Did you?
Yes, just some of them don't have. We're gonna get there.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So let's talk a little bit about video.
Yeah.
Then I'll show some cool toys. Then we'll do some ISO testing. Showing.
Yeah.
All right. So I will prompt you. Obviously, we shoot this show on the SL2S. So the SL2S has been our de facto video camera for a number of years. I say our, I mean yours and Jose's. The SL3S, we talked about the stills. But really, I think the big changes that people wanted on the video side were now implemented in the SL3S.
No.
So I'm gonna So I'm gonna have David take the reins here and talk about why the SL3S is better for video than its predecessors, what makes it so good, and what are the features and functions that were changed. So
sure.
If you want me to pull up the tech specs,
Do we need a drum roll?
Can you do that for you here?
Yeah, please. Go to the features one though.
Okay, got you.
And then I'll have you go over to the just to hit the high points.
Yeah.
Okay, and I would say headlining feature here.
Hydrate while you talk.
Sure. I'm just going to say this. Okay. So the SL3 did get some video upgrades. I'm going to use upgrades in quotes. There's a lot of limitations on video features on the SL3. It crops variable in every different mode. It's limited. Yes, it shoots 8K. Woo. But I just don't know there's a lot of people asking for 8K. And it came with, when the SL3 came out, a lot of the video features just came with too much baggage. It had too much rolling shutter effect because the sensor is not built for speed. It's built for resolution and dynamic range. So you have a lot of rolling shutter effect when using bigger sensor areas. So in order to negate that, you got to go to a small sensor area. Then why are you even bothering? In just kind of summarize that, there's a reason that we're still using SL2Ss in the studio, not SL3s. Because the SL2 remained a better choice for video than the SL3.
The SL2S. You mean?
The SL2S remained a better choice for video than the SL3.
Yes.
Okay? I have not made any bones about that. In fact, I think I said that on the SL3 episode.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, let's hope that this S model addresses some of those shortcomings, and not just that, but takes us forward from where the SL2S was. And it has. 8K video is gone. I'm not going to miss it. I don't think most videographers are going to miss it, because what we get instead is we get 6K open gate. That's the headlining feature. And for those who don't know the lingo, okay, open gate means there's no cropping. It means that you're capturing the entire sensor area, which is not a normal video aspect ratio. That's 2:3 or 3:2, right? Which is a traditional photo format. That 3:2 has an advantage that you can crop in because, let's say, regular cine cropping, for YouTube might be like what you're watching, which is 16:9. If you're watching Netflix, it's 2.2 to 1. That's like the Netflix ratio. And if you're watching in the theater, it's 2.4 or 2.39 to 1. Much, much skinnier frame, but what's really cool, and this is not limited to the SL3S, this is how most professional cine cameras are shot. They shoot them open gate, and then they can crop later. A good example of this is if anyone ever saw like the Zack Snyder Justice League thing. when it came out, the first one, it was shot in widescreen. And then Zack Snyder, the director, went back and he issued a new thing, which was actually just like open gate. So he shot much wider, much taller format, which was the original that was shot on camera. Because he wanted to show that weird format. I don't know. Good for him. Most people crop it.
Okay.
But you have that at the professional level. Leica hasn't had the open gate until now. And that means that you can variably crop up and down in the frame, just in case an actor stands up and you need to not cut his head off. It allows for more creative possibility. The other really interesting advantage is if you flip a 16:9 frame vertically, you can do so and get a 4K image with no cropping in vertical 9:16 video, which a lot of people are shooting vertical video for social media on the phone. Or for like advertising photography on like bus stops and things like that, so shot vertically. Up until now, you've probably seen a lot of videographers shooting video like this. I know our videographers have shot like this to shoot vertical video because it's the only way to get 4K not cropped. But with the, actually, nope, that's an SL3. With the SL3-S, you can shoot normally, and in 6K open gate, you can do one shoot and get 16:9 horizontal and pull out 16:9 vertical out of the exact same footage, 4K output for both at native size, which is
pretty sweet.
I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. The other advantage that you get creatively is you're able to use lenses like this. This is a 50 Noctilux M, or if you want to go lightweight, here's a 50 Summilux 1.4, which also call it kind of a baby Noctilux. It's a beautiful look to it, especially the one with the close focus, which is this version here. And if you throw that on an M adapter L, you can shoot the full look of that lens like you would for still photos, but for 6K video, and it looks outstanding. So that gives you a creative possibility that you don't necessarily get with smaller crops because you're losing the magic of a lens like this when you're cropping in tight. So having that wider format really gives you a lot of flexibility for using these lenses. And that can be shot a wide variety of ways. But so moving on now.
Yeah.
We also get the ability to shoot ProRes 422 at any resolution internal, and I say internal to the camera. That can be shot to Compact Flash Express, or it can be shot to directly to an SSD over USB connection, which is really great because the ProRes speeds, do you have that, the message I sent you?
Oh, not really.
Hold on.
No, yeah.
I'm just going to pull this up. So, because I need to reference this because okay, here we go. So that means, I'm just going to say this. The bit rates are absurd. I mean, ridiculous on the SL3-S. Here we go. Let's see. That is blah, blah, blah. Let's see. Where is it? Come on. Okay. So that's the bit rate at ProRes 422 in Cine 6K, I think, is 1900 megabits per second, which is 242 megabytes per second, which is 14.5 gigabytes per minute.
Oh my goodness.
Which is 872.5 gigabytes per hour of video footage. This is a 512 card. This isn't even an hour's worth of 6K or Cine 6K ProRes video. Absurd. But you can buy a 2 terabyte Samsung SSD for $150. And this will store over 2 hours of video footage. So for people doing serious video production, these are pretty cheap.
Yeah.
And that is great to see Leica listen to the community and needing the SSDs. Because frankly, I mean, like Blackmagic cameras have been doing it forever. Red cameras do it.
Yeah.
So being able to use inexpensive, large media is fantastic. Do be aware, though, it is currently limited to 2 terabytes. So do not try a 4 terabyte drive. It won't work.
Okay.
Okay. That also makes production easier because it means I can take this, plug it right into my computer, and start editing off the drive because I don't need to import it.
Okay.
So that's pretty outstanding.
Nice.
ProRes 422 HQ is a very, very high quality file. You combine that with Leica's L-Log format, and you have a lot of flexibility in post-processing, a lot of dynamic range, and a lot of malleability in post. If you need more than that, the camera also supports up to 5.9K 12-bit RAW output. Not to any recording medium. You do have to use an external recorder. That's either an Atomos Ninja, which I think we actually have one over there, or I think, because the SL3-S also supported this, which is the Blackmagic Video Assist 4K or something, 8K or whatever it's called now. So I think, I do have to verify this. I know for a fact that it works with Atomos Recorder, Ninja 5 and Ninja 5 Plus,
Okay.
as long as it's running the latest firmware. And you're using an HDMI 2.1 cable, which is important. So you can get 6K RAW video, and that RAW will be in ProRes RAW if you go to an Atomos. And the thing I do need to double check is if you're using it on a Blackmagic device, I believe that it gives you Blackmagic RAW. It's not in the specs, but it's something we're checking on. Because some people prefer different workflows. So if you like, ProRes RAW is going to work great in either Final Cut Pro or in Premiere. And then on the other side, if you use Resolve, you may want to use a Blackmagic device because that's going to be better for Blackmagic RAW. Again, it just depends what your particular workflow is. But if you're using Final Cut, no problem. Use ProRes RAW. Okay, those are both insanely cool that you can shoot ProRes at all resolutions from Cine 6K all the way down to Full HD, and you can shoot RAW again. Also, I think it only is 5.9K, Cine 4K, and 3.5K in RAW, and that's more of a device limitation.
Now, just to be clear, these things you're talking about, the SL3 cannot do.
No.
Okay.
No.
That's important to keep in mind.
Kind of. I mean, the SL3 I think can only do ProRes in Full HD. It doesn't even do 4K.
Got it. Okay.
So this does all of the things.
Okay.
It has a huge capability in terms of different resolutions. If you pull that up real quick, I'm just going to hit the high points of the tech specs video. Okay, so we're looking at 6K open gate, Cine 6K, which is 17 by 9, 6K, 16 by 9. There's a slightly different variation for 6K and ProRes just because of the ProRes container. I mean, it's just off by like 100 pixels. Cine 4K, 17 by 9. Cine 4K for RAW, which is, again, just slightly different size. 4K, 3.5K for the RAW, and then Full HD.
And you don't have to remember all this. This
No,
is
we have
on our
specs.
website.
Yeah, we have lots and lots of specs.
There's more specs than you could ever know what to do with.
It is ridiculous.
Pretty wild. Okay. But let's keep it a little bit higher level than that because we want to.
Sure. Otherwise, and most of these can be recorded internally except for the RAW. They can also be sent over HDMI if you want. What's great, always from the beginning with the original SL through the SL2 and the SL3 generation, there is a full-size HDMI port, but it does get upgraded on here to HDMI 2.1 Type A, full size. So that's going to be kind of the latest and greatest high bandwidth.
Okay.
It also has USB-C 3.1 with charging, which you talked about. This does get upgraded. I'm going to get a little overhead here. Wow, that is a disaster.
Just shove it all on my side.
Okay, yeah. Here we go. What was that? I do want to show some of this on the camera. So this little guy here, there we go. This little guy here is a timecode port. A lot of people ask what this little button is on the side. It's not a button. It's a little cover. Okay, so this is a dedicated timecode port to allow you to take an external timecode generator and plug it in, and then in the menu you'll see that there's external what's called timecode timecode sync, I think it's called, TC sync in the camera. I'm not sure how the terminology is. So you can use an external timecode device if you need to sync multiple cameras together for editing. And then on this side, we've got our full-size HDMI. We have our microphone in, we have our headphone out, and we have our USB-C right here. So we've got a lot of ports on that side. The other side, in case you haven't seen it, we've got our CF Express Type B slot right here. And then we also have a UHS Type 2 SD slot. So all the things, and yes, everything is weather sealed, even all the ports and everything like that. So the thing is still a tank.
Now, the autofocus improvements that we got from the still side, are they going to benefit video as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The algorithms are slightly different and tweaked.
I think that's not a concerning error, right?
What is that?
It says, we're getting a big error message on our YouTube thing. It just says, YouTube video.
I don't know. Jose, everything look okay?
Is the stream looking okay? Just put it in the chat if there's any issues. But let's keep going until somebody says
weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's fine.
Yeah, so the autofocus performance carries over, but they've tweaked the algorithms so that the focus is slower, but smoother. Because what you don't want on video is just focus, out of focus, focus, out of
Right.
It's much more gradual in terms of how it pulls focus, which is great. From our testing, what's great about the autofocus in video is that it's extremely sticky. So once you lock onto a subject and start shooting, it will very accurately keep tracking that subject. And even on our testing, Brandon in the store, he shot some sample video at night, which is harder because the camera's always going to do better autofocus in better light and lower ISO. But his subject and him, as he's tracking, because the subject was moving and he's moving, past a lamppost, a street light, and normally in the past, let's say a different generation of camera might have lost focus because it got interrupted by the pole. This just ignored the pole and kept tracking the subject. And I think that's part of that hybrid system where it has that, object detection and it kind of knows what it's looking at.
Yeah, sweet.
So that works really well.
So this is, from what I can tell as a non-video person, the most viable video capable camera that Leica has ever made.
Yes.
This is going to, whereas you had said with an SL3, you may want to stick with the SL2S. I think now you would comfortably recommend to say you should upgrade your SL2S to an SL3S if you're doing a lot of video work.
100%.
Okay, perfect.
Now, that brings us to our own studio, right?
Well,
We talked about
so, how much is that going to cost? $15,000 to get three of these?
Now, what's interesting is
Give me your wallet.
I don't know if we necessarily this is just kind of like talking out loud, right?
Yeah.
So we may not need it for our main camera because we don't really move at all. We're static.
Yeah.
Where things get a little dicey is our overhead cameras, and I'm just going to be like straight out. We set them manually. We hold an object, we focus on them before the show, and we try to hold everything at that point of focus. And there's a reason for that, because when we first started out, we tried to put these on tracking, and they'd hit the table.
Yeah.
Like you'd be holding something, and it would focus right through the table. Mm-hmm. And you're like, you'd put your hand there to focus, like, okay, I got it, and then it would lose focus again.
It's frustrating. Yeah.
So we've tried, and there's a reason that we gave up on it.
Yeah.
So I foresee SL3Ss above our heads in the future because we could put those in smart tracking, in like with a zone right about here, and anything we put there, we'll just focus on it.
Yeah, we're going to test it out for sure. I have some ideas for how we can do that. So that would be really nice to be able to actually move things around and have it stay in focus. But otherwise, yeah, you'll just come in one day and there'll be 3 SL3Ss here. You won't even know how they got there. Like, wait, what? Anyway, okay. I think that's probably enough video for now. Everyone who's watching is probably losing their mind, except for like the 3 people.
I feel like brains have melted.
Well, it's important. It's really, really important. And everyone who asks about video tends to get kind of brushed off. So I really want to. I wanted to spend time talking about that. And the reality is, if you have more or deeper questions about how the SL3S works with video, reach out to us. Shoot David an email, comment on here. We're available. So don't ask me because I have no idea. I'll just make up numbers and letters. Open gate, close gate, 4 ProRes 22 HQ. Yeah, awesome.
I mean, but that's what we sound like to non-photo people. Like, I just want you to recognize that for a second.
That's probably true.
It's like they're like, Asuma low? What's that?
Yeah, that's fine. Anyway, so now that we've gotten the video thing, again, we can still, if you have questions about video, just throw them in the chat.
Well, this is good. We're right at the midpoint. Let's do.
I want to show some cool stuff.
Well, let's take some questions about video if there's any.
Questions? Fine.
Question is, what is video?
What is video? What video is? Jose.
What video
All
is?
right. Let's see. Okay. Where was it? I lost it. Okay. For the non-professional, what makes the video performance better than the Q3?
The Q3 shares the same sensor as the SL3, and the same as the M11, right? So for the very same reasons that video is not fantastic on the SL3, I'm not making a secret about that. It's the exact same reasons. The sensor is not geared for speed. It's geared for quality.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a very high maximum frame rate. It doesn't have a very high readout rate, which means you're going to get what's called a rolling shutter effect, because the sensor's read out row by row by row by row. All the pixels come out in a row. And what happens is if you're panning or you have a subject moving, that often we call it colloquially the jelly effect, right? Where it's the whole frame looks like it's wobbling to the side like that, because it takes so much longer for the top row of pixels to read out than the bottom row of pixels. That can be negated somewhat by going to a APS size where it's a smaller area to read out, but it's still the SL3 sensor and the Q3 sensor are phenomenal sensors. The best sensors that I have ever used for still photography. Flat out, period. Not good for video.
There you go.
That's why Q3, maybe not the absolute best for doing.
And remember, an SL3S is $1,000 less than a Q3. I mean, I guess you don't get a lens.
You don't get a lens.
Don't flame
You don't
me
get
for
a
that.
lens.
But I'm saying it's still less.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did want to address is Donald asks, are the motors and the lenses fast enough to keep up? And this is a great
That is a good question.
because we've done episodes on all the new L-mount lenses Leica has released. And one of the things that I've shown on the episodes is that the newer, less expensive non-Apo lenses actually do focus faster. And there's just less glass, they're lighter weight. So for maximum continuous tracking focus performance on the SL3S, I recommend the 35 and 50 non-Apo SLs, the 14 to 24, 24 to 70, 7200 lenses as well. For static subjects, it's the same. There's no noticeable meaningful difference really. But for tracking, I was playing today with the 7200, and that lens is super fast on the SL3S. So if I was getting an SL3S, I would basically need to have in my kit probably a 35 or 50 non-Apo, which are two of my favorite lenses. I just took one on a trip. And then the 7200, because I love the Apo lenses for my landscape work, for my automotive work. But when I have to go to shoot motion, like cars moving, which I do a lot, or whatever, I like to have those non-Apo lenses because they do focus faster. And a lot of times, those are very sort of center-focused subjects, so I don't necessarily need the biting edge performance of the Apos.
Sure.
So my creative needs change, and I change my equipment based on that. That's a great question.
Okay, I like that.
No, the SL3S does not have manual focus assistance for M lenses because it doesn't know when you're changing the focus. Honestly, I always turn that off on the M cameras anyway because it drives me crazy when I accidentally turn the focus ring and it magnify. So,
well, thankfully, in the latest firmware update,
oh, that's right, we got
the joystick back.
The new firmware for the SL2S, SL2, SL3, SL3S, well, SL3.
SL3.
We got back button joystick magnification with M lenses again. We lost it in 6.0 and we were so sad.
Yes.
We have it again. So check Red Dot Forum for that. Any more questions? Daniel says hello.
Hello. We do have some cool stuff to show.
Yeah, we'll show some goodies.
I'm gonna show goodie.
Ooh, okay.
And then you're gonna show goodie.
Okay, you can show goodie. That's fine.
Okay. Here it is. Just a
Wow,
bag,
bag.
Josh.
Is it a choking hazard?
It is a choking hazard.
Exactly. All right. So what is? Well, there's not. The lag is too long. But if you watched any more, if you watch this show, you know there's one thing we say. Well, a few things you say all the time. But there's one thing we say more than anything else. We say it so much, we've had not one, but 2 episodes dedicated to that phrase. So we felt it appropriate to put it on a t-shirt.
We did. Anyone know what it is?
Well, the lag is too long.
Oh my gosh.
Go on.
All right. Well, Josh, what kind of t-shirt should I get?
Well, David.
It's...
Oh, we're so cheesy.
Oh, okay. It depends.
So yes, we actually made It Depends t-shirts because we are huge nerds. It does have a cool patch on the sleeve.
It's actually embroidered. There you go.
It's a very nice quality shirt. Yeah, show them on the close up.
There you go. So you can see. There you go.
There it is.
It's upside down. There it is. Yeah,
it's a really, really nice shirt. And it's just a fun project. Thank you to Kirsten for making this happen.
And this is made actually here in Miami, locally.
Yeah. So
yeah, these are,
I was thinking throw a link in the chat.
yeah, all of our red dot wear is all, and has been, every single thing going back to 2015. They're all made in the USA t-shirts, the blanks, and then the printing is all done locally here at a t-shirt shop in Miami. So got to keep it local.
Exactly. So anyway, it depends if you want to support the show or just look super cool or confuse people with your It Depends shirt.
They're like, what does that mean? You're like, if you know, you know.
Okay, so
And then you have something cool to show off.
I, in typical Josh fashion, I usually bring something cool that I recently added to our pre-owned department. Tonight I actually brought two things because I couldn't decide which one to bring, and they're both kind of in the same vein.
Yeah.
So as you know, I'm a giant geek for using vintage glass on modern cameras. I've done, we did a whole presentation at LSI a couple years ago about it, and I've talked about it at length, and a lot of my photography is that way. And we just recently got two vintage lenses in that happen to be two of my favorites, and I thought I would show them for you today. So starting with this one, this lovely little bag here, we have a whole episode dedicated to actually both of these types of lenses. First, we have got in this mysterious little case. These are like super well packaged, so I apologize. Here we go. Can we get the overhead? This is a, here we go, Leica 50mm Summilux version 2 preaspheric. This particular one is from, I think, I already forgot, I have the year.
84.
19 when?
84.
1984. Okay, so I'm 3 years younger than this lens. That's crazy. And this is a lens that I adore because it has an absolutely lovely rendering. It's almost like a baby Noctilux, except a little bit more usable day to day. They made these lenses for a very, very long time. From the 1961 to 1995, we saw this design. And this is a later one. Again, this is in the last 10 years of production. And these are a fantastic companion to either a modern 50 Summilux or any other 50 lens because the rendering is just so different. But it's not so delicate and fragile that you can't use it day to day. I mean, it's very easy to use. It feels pretty modern. This was cellulite by DAG. And what's cool about this lens is two things. Number one, it comes with the awesome 12586 lens hood, which Leica actually still uses on their special editions, like the black chrome, LHSA, some of these lenses they've done over the years. Now, what's even cooler than that is that if you know anything about the E43 50 Summiluxes of any generation, is you can't really use a traditional UV filter with the hood at the same time because they're too thick. But for a period of time, Leica actually made a low profile UVA filter that's specifically designed for this lens, and this lens comes with it. So this is an E43 UVA filter, except you'll notice it's like skinnier than usual. What that allows you to do is mount the filter on the lens and attach the hood at the same time. So because these older lenses have softer coatings, it's almost a requirement to use a UV filter if you're going to use it day to day or more regularly. And this lens comes with these super, super rare UV filters. So if you want something that's fully CLA'd, super fun to use, very unique, different than anything modern, and also has the filter, has the hood, has the little reversing hood cap with everything, this is a really, really nice option. And we do have an episode all about 50 Summilux lenses, so you can see how this lens renders compared to the ones that came before and the ones that came after. So that's the first one I want to show you. The next one, because I said I brought two, a little bit older. Let's see here.
What do we got?
Notes on it. So in addition to having an episode on all the 50 Summiluxes, we also have an episode on all the 35 Summiluxes. And of course, I had to bring a very well packaged, I should have unpackaged this before the show. But
you think?
Whatever, it's fine. You can see how thorough and meticulous I am. Because it's
I don't think there was ever any doubt.
It's in a bag, then it's in bubble wrap, then it's in another bag, and then it's in a pouch.
It's a Fabergé
yes. Okay. So, I'm a huge fan of 35 Summilux. David and I talk about this lens all the time. And the first version is the steel rim. You can buy the reissue of that. That lens is pretty well legendary. When they replaced the steel rim with the version 2, they made that lens for 3 decades. And in the very, very beginning, really just in about 1967, 1968, we saw a kind of a evolution with a bunch of different variations. After the late 60s, all the lenses manufactured on them were basically the same, with only minor, maybe like engraving differences. But one of the most interesting and most desirable iterations of these lenses are the ones that I call them in the 222 series, meaning the serial number begins with 222, as you can see this one does. And the reason is because, number one, they're a lot older, so they have a little bit more of a glow to them than the newer ones. But most importantly is they have an infinity lock. So what that is a little button here, if you don't know, that locks the lens at infinity. So you press the button to release it. The infinity lock lenses of the 35 Summilux Purispheric are the most desirable and the rarest. And it gets even crazier because there's actually 3 versions of the infinity lock lens. You have a black painted brass, a black painted aluminum, and an unpainted aluminum. The black painted brass is the most desirable. Those lenses are almost always 5 figures. The black painted aluminum is the next most desirable, and that is what I have here. The thing is, these aren't insanely rare in the sense of there's more, there's probably a couple thousand, maybe give or take, that they made over the years. But remember, this lens is from 1967. So the majority of these lenses now are full of haze and fungus and dust, or they have terrible cleaning marks, or they're just beyond salvation. In fact, I turn away more of these than I take in. So what I look for, just like I did with this 50 Summilux that I showed you, are lenses that don't have those problems. Because mechanically, you can loosen the focus, you can fix the aperture range, but once the glass is shot, once the glass is full of cleaning marks and haze, there's not much you can do, especially if it's between cemented elements. So what I look for when I get these vintage lenses for inventory is that they are super, super clean optically. I don't care about a couple dust specks because that does nothing. But in terms of the optics being super shootable on a modern camera, that's what I go for. So just wanted to show you sort of 2 really, really cool examples of lenses that are, I guess, going to be sold already. So let's do fast. However, we have a lot of other cool vintage stuff that I've added. Sorry, I didn't think they would sell that quickly. I've added a wide variety of film bodies, a number of vintage lenses, modern lenses to the used department because I was out of the office for like 2 weeks, beginning of January. So of course, when I came back, there was a whole bunch of stuff waiting for me to list. So I dumped a ton of really cool stuff on the site. Jose, you can drop in the new arrivals link if you want as well, because these are the kind of things, and you'll see sometimes I'll actually write up a description for something before it's fully listed. You can always tell if I wrote the description and I kind of break it all down, and there's something special about it. I'm going to carefully put these lenses back in their little houses so that I don't damage them for the next owner.
Nice.
So anyway, just a little bit of nerd out session with a cool T-shirt, and also I'll tell you what, anyone who buys a camera or lens tonight, I'll give you a free It Depends T-shirt. How's that?
Ooh, okay.
There we go, freebies. Okay, what is?
We should talk about this. Is also something.
Oh yes, can you talk about that while I pack this stuff up?
Yes. Okay. I will do the talking. Okay. So here is. Let's get it back on track. So here is our SL3-S, and I do. Wow, this drive is just. I mean, red is very.
You
cool.
made the mess, bro. You made
really
the mess.
did. I need to own this one. Okay.
How dare you?
So let's talk about accessories for a second. Wow. Okay.
You're good now? You got this?
I am.
Okay.
I am. So the hand grip, which is the same that was introduced with the SL3. This hand grip does work on the SL3-S. You do have to remove the little.
Yeah, I can take it off.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. There. And wait, actually, and it has a little house.
Well, so, you're gonna have a hard time.
I know. I'm just gonna show.
I think a little fiddly on camera. That's all.
Let me just show that again. Okay. This cover, it's a little rubber cover right here, comes off so that you can have the contacts from the grip actually work with the camera. But so you don't lose this little doohickey here, you can.
Official name?
Yeah, you can actually put it in. I'm gonna not stick it in there, but if you push in, it will seat in there pretty firmly, and you're gonna have to.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of love to get it out of there, so you know.
Yeah, so
but the reality is, you're probably not gonna take it out once you put
right.
it in.
So this gives a little place for that to live, so you don't lose it or misplace it. And then attaching it's really simple. You just screw it on there. It has a nice little registration pin, and we go like that, and done. What I really like about this grip, I mean, it's obviously the same thing I liked on the SL3, and it's the same camera. It's so rigid, like it is on there. Some grips have a lot of flex. This one has almost none. It does give you a second battery position, which is really nice. Got the little flip thing here. And you got a rear joystick, clickable thumb wheel, shutter release, and another dial. So it just really gives a nice balance on the camera. And what I also like is when you're using heavier lenses, the grip gives just that extra kind of bracing, especially because the SL3 and SL3S bodies are smaller than the SL2 in terms of size and weight. They're 70 grams lighter, I believe, from generation to generation.
Oh, I'm paying attention.
Yeah, I think the SL3 is 70 grams lighter than the SL2.
More than that.
Or, right?
No, more than that. It's blah, 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 right? Hold on.
I have a comparison there.
I know, that's right. Do you have the weight in here somewhere?
Yeah, right there.
I guess it is. I thought it was more than that. It feels like a lot more than that.
Yeah,
when
it's
you pick up an
it's
SL3,
Yeah.
if you're used to the SL2, I mean, obviously today I was going back and forth. You feel that difference right away. It's very much like the M10 to the M11.
Yeah, aluminum, yeah. So yeah, it's lighter and smaller. And the grip really helps if you're using a larger lens. So the grip is a really nice accessory. I think it's kind of underloved, but it is nice. And it doesn't add a lot of weight, but it does add more.
Well, plus the other nice thing that you didn't mention, I don't think,
Dual
is,
battery.
Well, no. Well, that, yes, but also this. You can use a hand strap.
You can, yes.
Yeah, there's a hand strap connector on the grip. So if you
look
have
there.
the grip on there, you can use a hand strap, which is nice.
Right there. Okay. Now, small elephant, baby elephant in the room that maybe people know about already, and we should probably address this. So Leica, in order to comply with new EU guidance, regulations, whatever they call it in the EU, the European Union, there is an electronic waste initiative. So instead of people having, and I'm sure everyone can attest to this, I certainly do, I have boxes and boxes at home, bins full of old cables and
I mean, wait, I thought
dedicated-
they're all in the studio.
That's a
If
small
only you
amount,
could
yeah.
see.
Only you could see. We were just joking about that.
Oh my goodness.
But the amount of dedicated proprietary cables, barrel connectors, 9 volt, 12 volt, 5 volt, all these different power adapters. So the European Union saw this massive amount of electronic waste that's just ending up in landfills or clogging people's houses. And one, they made an initiative to have unified charging on USB Type-C. So if you look at the SL3, SL3-S, the Q3, the M11, all of these, the DLX 8, all these cameras now have USB built-in charging. And they also no longer come with external battery chargers. This charger came with the SL2 and the SL2S. It does not come in the box for the SL3 or the SL3S. Right now, you get no charger.
You do get a cable.
But you do get a Leica cable.
You could navigate it out from that pile of
Is that
junk.
it?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, cool. All right. You do get a really nice braided USB-C cable, which is optimized both for charging speed as well as for data transfer. So you can charge one battery in the camera at a time.
Yes.
If you're like me, you don't live life shooting one battery. I live on the edge.
That's like morning coffee is one battery. Come on.
So I highly recommend, if you haven't seen it, we'll get a close-up of that. This is the, oh, it is upside down. This is the Leica dual battery charger, and it's pretty cool. You just pop in batteries like so. They don't fall out. And it has nice little rubber feet here, as well as little rubber feet on the back. So you can either set it down on the table like this or on the floor, or you can also set it upright and it'll stay that way. And it has a handy dandy, guess what? USB-C charge connection. So you can use the same cable that came with the camera. You can use the same charger that you might with your laptop. It's actually why I had this big red cord over here. So this is actually the charger I use for my laptop. I have a MacBook Pro, but I've replaced the built-in one with this guy, which I absolutely love. It is got little flip-out prongs. It is a fraction of the size of the MacBook charger, which is about that big and white and glossy. This one's much more discreet. It's got 2 USB-C ports, and it is a 90-watt adapter. So it's almost as big as the standard one, but really, really compact. So what I do is I can have 2 ports when I'm traveling. I can either charge my laptop on one, or I can plug my phone in, and I can actually keep this plugging into here, or I could charge both the camera and the external battery charger using one power adapter. So
Keen viewers will notice, as usual, David is more excited about USB cables than about, about everything else on that table.
I am, but I do want to. Every episode, I got to point this out. Okay, you're with lens caps and whatever.
No,
right?
no, it's important. I agree with you, actually. I'm giving you a hard time.
I'm going to show this. Let's go to the close-up. So this is my favorite charge cable, both for my phone, for my laptop. I got a bunch of these things. This is an Anchor power cable. And you see, it's nice and small, folds up. It's very flexible. So I can just jam it in my bag, okay? And it's super lightweight. The problem is, this is not for data at all. Like, you will be USB 1 speeds or something insane. It'll be like living in the 90s again. You do not, it doesn't matter that it's USB-C. People are like, oh, it's USB-C, it's fast. No, this is a USB-C power cable only. It's for just for power. This is what a data cable looks like, or in this case, for my SSD, this is a short data cable. And you see how thick and not flexible these are. They're very thick insulated cables with big rubber and metal sheathing for data protection. They also, some of them, like the Leica one, will carry power too. Some are just for data. So you just got to be careful with that. I don't even want to know.
No, it's not about me. So David just had to drop the lens cap fact on Josh.
The what?
Here's the difference, though. We sell the lens caps, okay? Okay? We don't sell USB-C cable. Well, I guess we do, actually. Rats.
Damn it. All right. Now I'm going to show one other thing.
I'm just going to
kick back. Okay.
Kick back, relax, and let you talk about cables for the next 34 minutes.
So this is my favorite laptop charger, right? But if you're just looking to charge the camera, this I think is the most reliable portable charger right here, and you can get a shot of that.
Yes, please, Jose.
Please, Jose.
Get
you
it close up.
Okay, this is a single USB charger, much more compact, fits in the palm of your hand. But this is a 60 or 65 watt, 65 watt power adapter, which is insane. It looks about the size of an iPhone power adapter, but it's much higher wattage. The reason that I show this is because
you love it.
No, you might have a ton of USB power supplies hanging around and you don't realize they're 5 watts or 10 watts. That's actually not high enough to charge the camera. Or if you plug into the dual battery charger, you'll wonder why only one battery is lit up and charging at the same time. You need at least 35 watts to charge the battery in the camera with any kind of speed, or to be able to charge 2 batteries simultaneously on the dual charger.
So Martin asked a question. That's exactly what I'm going to talk about next. And I'm sorry, it's not about cables, but it's something we actually sell.
Oh, and I want to show that. Oh, you can show. Okay, you showed that off here.
So yes, Martin asks about an L bracket. So as the brand that has really established its name in that space is Really Right Stuff.
They have.
We like them. I own a bunch of their stuff.
So do I.
There hasn't been an alternative that we've been able to offer because we don't sell Really Right Stuff products. We can get a close up there here. This is the Really Right Stuff SL3 bracket with the L adapter, so you can do verticals. Pretty standard stuff. There is now an alternative that we sell, which is, if you all are familiar with the company Match Technical, they make the thumbs ups. They also make a thumbs up for the SL3. They have been around forever. And Match Technical is now sort of diversifying, and they have manufactured an L bracket for the SL3. This is the first time they've done this. And it is functionally pretty much the same as a Really Right Stuff bracket. The big advantage and the reason I've been liking this is because it's considerably lighter.
It is.
Like, dramatically so. And when you're talking about 70-gram differences between SL3, SL2, these things matter. So it doesn't have the little clever wrench slot that the Really Right Stuff bracket does, so I definitely got to give them points for that.
See, it also doesn't have mounting points on the side.
Correct. So it's a little bit more streamlined.
This is for video, though.
Yeah, a little more streamlined, but for stills, you're not going to give up any functionality, and you just need to get it comes with a wrench. It's just there's not a place to store it. So if you want to get an L bracket for your SL3, that is lighter than the Really Right Stuff version, less expensive than the Really Right Stuff version.
It's about half the price, right?
No, it's like $40 less.
Oh, 40. Okay.
Don't say anything. Lighter, a little bit less expensive, easier to get because the Really Right Stuff is always out of stock. And it's good stuff. I'm not bashing it at all. It's fantastic stuff. And also, you can get from Leica Store Miami, your favorite and best, awesomest Leica store on the planet, universe, and galaxy. You should get the Match Technical LB-SL3. This, of course, works on the SL3 or the SL3-S. It will not work on the SL2. So, just covering those grounds.
Okay. And there's one other thing I want to show off, and then we
is it another cable?
It is not. It is not.
Whatever you want to show is fine.
But I need the computer, or you can show it off for me.
I can show you on the computer. What do I show?
Show me on the computer.
Oh, Red Dot Forum?
Yeah. So I have been busy at work, kind of listening to feedback and optimizing Red Dot Forum website, because you might realize that we're also not just on YouTube. So if you go to reddotforum.com, Jose, if you will. Hey, that's me.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to show Josh. It's fine. You can see across the top of the page there, the navigation.
I'll give you the mouse so you can use it.
The navigation is a little more straightforward. So now we have news, reviews, field reports, technical articles, which, by the way, you should definitely check out this one, which is the firmware master list. I'm just going to pop in there. If you ever want to know if your firmware is up to date, we have a whole list here, and you can jump directly to each system, but I can scroll. Every single digital camera all the way back to the M8, this is every single firmware and any corresponding article that we've written about it with the current version. So we have the SL system, and you can see the SL3-S was just updated a couple days ago. The SL3 and the SL2 and SL2S were just updated about a month ago. The Q system, same updates back in December. The S system, CL, X, compact cameras. Every digital camera that Leica has made with a firmware update is in this database. And we host these files on our server, so they are never going to move. Leica isn't going to magically move them somewhere else, and the links are going to be broken. So we make sure to host these ourselves, so they're always available, always up to date, and you can download them there. The other thing that I want to show here, after you can see the other areas, is I have a whole new section here, which is RDF YouTube, which is us. So if you just click on the main link at the top, you can see this is actually our live stream we're doing right now. And we have chronological order of all of our videos on our channel. And
Nice. Good job, David.
Yeah, and then we break it down into different playlists. So if you don't want to deal with YouTube's not the best interface, and you want to learn about the Leica SL system, this is every episode and also produced videos that we've done relating to the SL system. So it makes it really easy for you, or maybe Josh's favorite, the Leica lenses, right? So these are episodes that we've done specifically on, there's Josh talking about his favorite 50 Summoluxes, and episodes 50 Summolux episode, 35s. So we've all the different lenses, so you can kind of get an idea here, and all of these can be played directly as it brings up YouTube inside of our website, which is
me.
Hey, it's a Josh. So all the same features that you'd have on YouTube, you actually have right on Red Dot Forum, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And lastly, I'll just show you right at the top, if you want to check up on our latest stuff, we also have our videos here as well.
Very nice.
And of course, the most important thing,
Uh-huh.
the most important thing is this big red button right there.
Subscribe.
You've got to subscribe. We are
So close.
So close.
To 30,000 followers. Or subscribers, sorry. Tantalizingly close.
Come on.
Make it
Help us
happen
out.
for us.
Come on, do it.
Do it for me.
Do it for Josh.
Do it for Josh.
Do it for Josh.
Let's get back to reality here,
All
Jose.
right, let's go.
We should do some questions and then I'll show some fun.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. Why the big price difference between the SL3 and the SL3S?
I mean, the sensor is the most expensive component. So it's a less complex sensor, I guess, or less expensive sensor. I don't really know exactly why.
You pay per pixel.
It also could just be Leica being aggressive and trying to give
I think that's more
people
likely.
an opportunity to get into the L mount system for less money. But we don't know the exact reason, obviously. But I'm not going to complain. Wait a minute. Are you complaining because you complain when Leicas go up in price? You can't complain when they also go down in price. Okay, you got to pick one. Okay.
I mean, if I had to guess, I wouldn't say the sensor's that much less expensive. I'm going to go with your thing. I think Leica's just being a little more aggressive on it to push them into the areas where they haven't been historically strong.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
What else?
Okay. Is the new handheld multi-shot function of the SL3S going to make more sense compared to the SL3 60 megapixel?
I will show that when I show
yeah.
images, but in my opinion, no, not for everyday use. It is a more specific use case for the multi-shot. It is not as flexible as just being able to take a regular photo, but it certainly can cover some of the difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also, is there a process time difference between the 96 megapixel and 48 megapixel multi-shot?
Well, the 48 is only for a JPEG. So you're still going to generate a 96 and it's just going to downsample it. But I haven't tried the JPEG, to be honest with you, so I'm not sure if it adds extra time. Multi-shot's already pretty darn slow, like compared to just single shot. So
It's a lot of pixels.
I doubt I would. Yeah, I don't want to knock it. I'm just saying like it takes more time. But I can test it out because we'll cover more of this in another episode.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then does the SL3S use hybrid phase detect autofocus and autofocus single, not autofocus continuous mode, or contrast detect autofocus only?
No, it uses both for all modes.
Yeah. There's
Yeah,
probably
so
a bias one way or the other because I think Leica has said they
for
prioritize.
continuous, it's probably biased towards phase, but
Yeah.
it still uses contrast and definitely uses object detection because, 100% it's using object detection to maintain its focus tracking. So there is it works very well with people. It works very well with pets. It's sharp on the eyes, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Another question: would you advocate for this SL3S in monochrome mode given the low light performance?
Well, monochrome mode, no, because all that's going to do is give you black and white JPEGs.
It's not going to increase. Yeah.
There's so much more to a monochromatic file than just converting to black and white. The M11 monochrome is still, by and large, and by a huge margin, the black and white king
For sure.
in the Leica space. I wouldn't buy an SL3S specifically for that. It certainly, I'm sure, makes really nice black and white images with conversions, but a monochrome camera is always going to give you better results than color camera converted. So I would go with the Q2 monochrome right now.
I feel the next question coming, which is, it's like, oh, is there a monochrome SL coming, Josh?
Well, one of the things that, and I think Steven brought this up in the chat, and we've talked about this as well, is with phase detection, you need color. And with a monochrome camera, you have no color. So there'd have to be some fundamental change in the way Leica does the sensors to make a monochrome version of the Q3 and the SL3 and the S3S. So
Interesting, yeah.
I'm sure they'll figure it out. Maybe they won't. I don't know. But that's, I think, probably the reason we haven't seen one of those cameras yet.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. With this new sensor, are there still edge problems with Leica M wide-angle lenses?
Well, the SL from the beginning was designed with M lenses in mind. So other manufacturers of mirrorless EVF cameras, there's been issues, I know, but I've never had any concerns using, you used that. One of my,
18 millimeter.
the guy who's showing in our gallery in March, he uses the wide-angle trialmar on the SL3 and the SL2 all the time, and he gets amazing results. So no, not a concern.
Okay. I think that is it for now.
Okay, let me pull up.
Yeah, there was another question about...
I can just say that one of Colin's favorite astrophotography lenses, which he makes no secret, is the 21 Summilux M that he uses on the SL2 and SL2S. And it's fantastic. So no, there's no problems.
So one of the things that we can come to the computer, Jose. Now we've only had this camera for a day and a half. We didn't have one before that. So there's a lot of testing still left to do because I also have a job working at a Leica store and I can't just test cameras 24 hours a day as much as I'd like to. But I did have some time today to generate a little bit of content and give me and us some insight into how these things work. So one of the things I was curious about was how does the SL3 at 60 megs compare to a identical photo taken with the SL3S in multishot at 96 megapixels. So that is one of the tests that I did. This is just a building that's under construction. I remember this was like a bunch of houses like 2 years ago, and now it's a monstrosity.
2 years ago, like 6 months ago.
Yeah, and it's crazy how fast they build these things. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is compare these two shots. So the reason that the shutter speeds are slightly different, and you can see this, is the light is changing constantly.
Cloud.
As soon as I would switch the cameras, the cloud would come, and it was driving me nuts. So again, over and over and over again, I just gave up. I was like, forget it.
Welcome to Miami.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So
we're very good at clouds.
yes. So on the left, we have the SL3, starting to have Apple Cinemark F8 tripod. We're talking best case scenario. And on the right, we have the SL3S in a multi-shot configuration. So if we zoom in, let's give it a second. You can see, of course, we have a larger reproduction with the SL3S file because it is 36 more megapixels. And of course, more detail. It's not super dramatic. I think if you were comparing this against any other camera that wasn't 60 megs, so like an SL2, an M10R, an SL2S for sure, the difference would be much more significant. But certainly if you're photographing architecture, landscape, anything static, and you want to get the most resolution with the SL3S, I would use multi-shot. It takes a little more time, and you can't go longer than 1 second because multi-shot is using the electronic shutter, which is limited in some capacity. So you can't go slower than a second. But for this environment, obviously I'm using regular shutter speed of 500 through a 320. It doesn't matter. But it's not a night and day difference where I would say, oh, I'll just buy an SL3S and never even need an SL3, even though I need the resolution. Because also the SL3 shoots natively at 60, which means every shot, whether it's burst, continuous, long exposure, short exposure, whatever, it's always going to be at that 60. Whereas the only way to get the 96 with the SL3S is with the slower, more laborious multi-shot process. But in this environment, it works fine because I'm just on a tripod and I'm chilling. There's something I want to talk about, and it's sort of a setting thing that I have figured out kind of by mistake, is there's and this is probably a firmware bug, but if you're getting an SL3S now, I'll talk about it because I think it's important. We agreed.
Yeah,
we should definitely, as soon as we figured it out, we're like, we got to make sure
You
we
got to
talk
tell the
about it.
people.
There's a function on the SL3S called, I want to get the naming right. It's right here. We actually get overhead of this, Jose. Thank you. In the multi-shot, there is a setting menu now, which we haven't seen before. And is that sharp? Yeah, it's pretty good, right? There is put it on tripod mode. You'll see this motion artifacts correction. Is artifacts with an I? Is that spelled?
Artifact?
Is that spelled wrong?
It's German.
I just noticed that. That's hilarious. Anyway,
It's the British
what
spelling.
I
That's the British
discovered,
spelling.
that's right. What I discovered, at least in my initial testing with the firmware that was just released for the SL3S, so this is current, is that you want to turn this off for the best performance. And I'm going to show you this because I think it is important to know. We can go back to the screen here. So give me a second. I want to make sure I'm giving you the right. Okay, good.
Yeah, with the E is in England.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
British spelling.
If you're British and you're watching this, learn how to spell your words correctly.
Oh.
So on the left, we have a multi-shot with the motion detection turned off, and on the right, we have it turned on. And you can see, maybe not on YouTube, but maybe, that there's just more detail and a little bit less. There's more detail and there's no like artifacting of any kind going on in the shot on the left because we had that turned off. It's not dramatic, but it's definitely noticeable. And I'm a pixel peeper, so I definitely noticed it. However, the thing to be aware of is if you do have things moving. So a great example is like these little straps here. You can see on the left, they start to get kind of blurry because they're moving in the wind. Where on the right, they're much crisper because the camera is using the motion detection, and I think it's just isolating them from one of the frames. So another place you can see that, well, let me zoom out. Here we go. Is this like little crane stringy thing? It's the technical term. You can see that on the right, it's definitely a lot cleaner than on the left because we have the motion detection turned off. So what I would say is if you're photographing a static subject that's definitely not moving, meaning like architecture, or I guess a landscape that doesn't have a lot of blowing trees in it, I, at least for now, until that's addressed in firmware, would turn off the motion artifacts detection because you can see there's just more detail in the shot on the left. So
Look at the bottom of the stair. Oh, yeah.
yeah, here you can
The
see
writing,
it in the writing on the crane thing. You can see there's just, I guess, like a little choppy. Again, it's probably a firmware bug, but we always talk good things about Leica, but I think it's important to be honest when we find a bug or something that's going to inhibit the camera from being at its best. So, and of course, if you go into tripod, handheld mode, you can't turn off the artifact correction. So you are going to lose some quality there. So I think while handheld mode is useful, I'd still prefer an SL3, at least for now. This is a brand new feature for the SL3S in terms of like in that generation. So who knows where Leica will take it with firmware. I'm sure they're going to be looking for user feedback, just like they have in the past.
For sure.
So this is important feedback that I want to give you guys and girls so that you can see kind of how to get the most performance out of the SL3S in multi-shot. So what I would say is SL3S multi-shot a replacement for buying an SL3? No, because SL3 has more dynamic range, and of course you have access to the full resolution in every scenario, whereas on the SL3S, you're still limited to the slightly less dynamic range of that sensor and limited to what you can photograph with multi-shot. But it is fantastic to have. And for a lot of people who are doing landscape, who are doing architecture, who are doing fine art reproduction, who also need to shoot action or events and need that autofocus, or if they're doing a lot of video work, this is a really, really nice feature to have, and I'm glad it's there. The other thing that I want to get to, or were there any questions about that, Jose? Multi-shot stuff?
Not yet. No.
Not yet? Okay.
No.
So we talk about ISO. And you'll know I have my lovely camera bag shelf that I've always used. It actually works really well, so I don't want to hear it. Plus, it's in the store, so nobody can bother me. Because if I'm in the street doing this kind of stuff, people are like, what are you doing? Oh, can I see? Or you, Josh, from YouTube? My God, you're so famous. Can I get your autograph? So many selfies. It's crazy. So what I wanted to understand was two things. Number one, how does the SL3S compare to the SL2S at high ISO? I was afraid it would be worse, actually, because the SL2S is just so ridiculously good. Number two, how does the SL3S compare to an SL3 downsampled to 24 megapixels? Because that's something you could do. So I did a bunch of testing, and I'll show you some of my results because it's so super exciting. So first, let's compare something like ISO 6400. going to take me a second to find the right shot, so bear with me here. Here we go. So first I want to look at SL3-S, which is in here somewhere. Almost. It's got to be this one. Yes. Okay. Okay, so we've got SL3-S versus SL2-S, both at ISO 6400. Same lens, same, you can see the exposure is exactly the same, all exactly the same. So the question is, how do these two cameras compare against each other? So if we zoom in, give it a second to load. Don't mind the color differences. I just didn't process these well enough because I was in a rush. And what we see here is a slight increase in detail in the SL3-S, which is fantastic. Noise is very, very similar. The noise profile looks very similar, not identical, but very similar. But I am seeing a slight increase in detail on the SL3-S, which is nice. My main concern was I didn't want it to be worse. I would have been really annoyed because the SL2-S is basically probably hitting the limit of what a 24 megapixel sensor can do. But both of these are amazing. So what this tells me...
And in fairness,
yes,
they're both BSI
correct,
CMOS sensors.
What this tells me is really two things. Number one, the SL2-S, despite being 4 years old now,
fantastic.
Is insanely good at high ISO. I mean, it is crushing it, considering that it has also stabilization and the 4K video and all the other things. And two, the SL3-S carries that torch on to be the high ISO champion at 24 megapixels. So really, really, really nice detail. Let's go even higher though. Let's go to 50,000. Here we go. Hold on. Yes. Okay.
Is this the danger zone?
Don't get Kenny Loggins on me now. Okay, I'm just gonna start singing on the show. Here we go. Let's let it render. This is probably like the usable limit, I think, of these cameras. But here you start to see where I think the SL3-S breaks away a little bit more, a little bit smoother. I mean, they're close, but you can see a little bit chunkier noise on the SL2-S. Now you could use all kinds of like AI denoise and blah blah blah, but they're still both exceptional. I think with more software playing around, you could make these look a lot closer to each other. So I wouldn't say that if I had an SL2-S, I wouldn't say, oh, I need to get an SL3-S just for better low light, because it's really only a little bit better or maybe the same in some situations. I'd say probably a half a stop better at most, maybe 2/3. But of course, the SL3-S has about a gajillion other things that make it better, which we just talked about over the last hour and 40 minutes. But it's just nice to see that the SL3-S is continuing. Here you can really see this gets really quite blotchy here, and it's still maintaining control a little bit better. Also here, it's hard to tell probably on YouTube, but it's holding this highlight a little bit better. So you're getting a little bit better dynamic range. I mean, they're splitting hairs because we're at ISO 50,000, but still interesting. But now...
Fascinating.
Very fascinating. Let's take a look at something different. Let's take a look at the SL3 downsampled to 24 megapixels in Lightroom. I just literally exported it as a 24 megapixel TIFF file and re-imported it to the SL3-S natively. I think 50,000 is probably an extreme example. Let's go to 6400 again. There we go. Oop. Nope. Yes. Sorry. No.
Nope.
I'm getting there. It's a lot of files. Okay, there's like 200 images. Here we go. SL3, SL3-S, 2424. Perfect. Okay, let's take a look. And what's interesting here is, in some situations, I actually think the SL3 downsample is a little bit better. Or at least it's the same. And that's kind of what happens when you start with more and get rid of stuff.
It's oversampling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're very, 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 very close, which is kind of nice, actually. So what I would say, too, is the SL3-S is the native low light king, but if you take your SL3 and you downsample to 24, it's going to get very close. Now, of course, you're not going to have the autofocus, the video, the multi-shot, the other things. And if you're buying an SL3, why would you want to shoot at 24? Why would you want to downsample to 24? But factoring all those things out, just asking yourselves, how do these two cameras compare? They are extremely close. It could go either way. I think a lot of it's going to be scenario dependent. I mean, I can look at these images. First of all, both of these cameras produce crazy good detail at 24 megs at 6400 ISO. If this was an SL2,
oh my gosh,
it would have been it would not be as good. Let's just put it like
it would not be as good.
It would not be as good. That's the best way that I can articulate it. I'm seeing a little more detail in the SL3-S here. I mean, again, I think it could go either way. Obviously, I don't want to have to downsize all of my SL3 images all the time.
Very processor intensive.
Exactly. So if you want,
I think it's also we need to say this.
Yes.
Because there could be some confusion.
Yes.
The 24 megapixels that Josh is showing on the SL3 is not out of the camera at 24 megapixels.
Correct.
It came out of the camera at 60
Correct.
megapixels, LDNG.
Yes.
There is the option for triple resolution technology. 60, 36, 18 megapixel. There's a caveat. The results shooting at 60 and downsampling in post-processing will be cleaner than you would get shooting at 36.
Yeah, I can show you that. So this is not a one-to-one comparison because of different resolutions, but I always forget how to swap these. Here we go. On the left, SL3 shooting an MDNG. That's 36 megapixels. On the right, SL3S at its native 24, of course, and both 6400 ISO. Let's take a look. Again, it's not going to be exactly the same because they're different resolutions. Let it render. Here we go. But here I am seeing less noise with the SL3S, which is what I would expect.
For sure.
So you're obviously getting a little bit more resolution because you're at 36.
But it's trade-off.
Less noise and more detail in the SL3S. So you can't gain noise performance comparable to the SL3S by just using a lower DNG resolution in the SL3. You do need to actually manually downsample that in Photoshop or Lightroom or your preferred software, which would be a waste of time.
Consuming, yeah.
The SL3S at 24 megs is the low light king. SL3 can match it if you go through all those steps, but you don't expect to be able to just downsample in the camera using the triple resolution to get there. The SL3S still has the edge. Yeah, I think it's probably enough images to show for now. We can get back to some questions. It's almost 10.
Do you have any specific like higher? What I'm curious about is like, what are we looking? Can we compare everything at say 10,000?
Sure.
Or 12,000? It's just kind of at the fringe because I know where these cameras historically have been. So I'm just kind of curious where the SL3S falls in.
Yeah. So let's take a look at SL3S versus SL2S because I think that's really the comparison that has the most merit because 24 versus 24.
Sure.
Let's take a look. See. Oh wait, that's 125,000. Sorry,
I think you picked the wrong one.
Yeah,
you're off by a 0.
Off by 1 0. There we go. Yeah, they look a lot different.
Wow.
Let's take a look. I'm sure they're gonna look almost exactly the same.
Swap them though.
Yeah. Here we go. Stand by. Loading, please. Oh, they can't see. Never mind.
There you go. Switch. Okay, yeah, switch. Oh, sorry. I thought the computer.
I know. We don't know. Okay. So here we have SL3S on the left, SL2S on the right. ISO 12,500.
I mean,
and they are very. I mean, there's so much slight color differences. I just didn't process them. I was lazy. They're both very, very good. I don't think I can give the edge. Maybe the SL3S has a slight edge. Looking at like the gradations here, the SL3S is a little bit smoother. Maybe there's a little bit more detail in the stitching.
I feel like the SL3S though is like maybe a third of a stop too bright though in the processing. Like I would bring it down just ever so slightly.
Maybe a little bit. Let's see.
Like just bring it down to 0 and see what that looks like. I mean, there's going to be differences in.
I know. You'd have to really if you really wanted to do this test for yourself, you'd have to like normalize everything and spend a lot more time.
This is why all my ISO testing is in black and white.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, now I think that's a closer match.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're very, very close.
Because now I think the SL3S just has a little edge because we're not boosting it.
Yeah. They're close.
Yeah, they're.
But again, I don't.
Oh, go back to the. That example with the Billingham bag. Yeah, do I see some moiraying on the SL2S, but I don't see it on the SL3? Or is that just from you scrolling?
I think it's just from me scrolling around, yeah.
Okay.
So what I really learned from this is, as I said, if you have an SL2S and you really, really value over everything else low light performance, the SL3S is going to be slightly better, but not to the point where it's worth the extra money.
It's not night and day.
But all of the other features you get, of course, are huge. But if you don't need any of those features, don't get an SL3S. Your SL2S is going to be awesome. I mean, it's a great camera that we obviously use right now. But if you want all of the improvements what the SL3 gives you, I mean, the interface, the screen, the autofocus, the video, the customizability, things I'm forgetting because it's late at night. All those things, it's a huge
Buffer depth, compact flash express.
Oh my goodness, there's so much. So that's my sort of overall takeaway. But let's get some questions as we're getting late, and then we can call it a night.
Yeah. We covered a lot of ground, I think.
I think we did, yeah.
Woo, for sure.
Jose,
when dialing in white balance, does SL3S enable you to fine-tune the different color quadrants?
No.
In the camera?
In the camera, no.
No. But I would shoot auto white balance. I know you don't, but I
would shoot. Okay,
you shoot daylight. Yeah.
I shoot daylight.
But it's raw, so I just fix it later. It takes 2 seconds.
Yeah, I shoot daylight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and the previous question was how high an ISO can produce usable results on the new SL3S.
I mean, everyone's definition of usable is going to be different, and also it depends on your use case. You know, if you're telling me I'm printing 30 by 40 versus just using images for an Instagram story, those are going to be two different answers.
I mean, just from looking at this, and 12,500 is squeaky clean. Like, what do you think? 25,000, 50,000?
I think 50,000 you can get away with if your exposure is spot on.
Yeah.
If you are converting to black and white, definitely. Or if you just have a very high tolerance for noise or not a need for ultimate image quality, if that's the difference between getting the shot and not.
I'd say 25.
But I think 25 is like the really usable.
Which is the same with the SL2S.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that.
Yeah, and then video, same. I mean, I think, although we haven't tested with the OpenGate, you might get away with more because it's a bigger sensor area.
TBD.
So, TBD. And I know how good the SL2S is at higher ISO.
Yes.
Yeah, there's been a couple of questions too about color rendering between SL3S and SL2S, and the sensors, which are not the same just because they're the same.
Obviously, there's a slight. You can see processed identically. There's a slight difference. So,
but
we're gonna need to work with the file.
Well, here's what I want to say about that because we get this question sometimes. I think agree with me.
Oh yeah.
Will never allow myself to be at the mercy of whatever the camera looks like when I import it in Lightroom with no edits on it, right?
The disservice.
As a photographer, whether you are serious or not, you have an eye and you want your images to look the way you saw them in your head. And you should be using the tools at your disposal, no matter how basic or how advanced, to go from the image as it comes into the computer and make it look like you saw it in your head. So yes, every sensor of every camera is going to have a slightly different response to color. And if you edit them all exactly the same way, there will be differences, but you shouldn't be doing that.
You should be editing per camera.
Yes, I mean, David has phenomenal Lightroom presets available, and he has different Lightroom presets for different cameras.
I don't have an SL3S one, though, because I haven't shot with it.
Right, we've had it for a day.
Yeah.
So ultimately, you should not allow yourself to be at the mercy of whatever the camera spits out. You have the ability and the tools to get exactly what you want. You may have to learn, just like we had to learn. We didn't just magically know it, and that's the fun part.
Wait, you didn't?
No, I know.
No.
Right. The fun part is that process. Anyway, what else?
Just got a question: SL3S versus M11 monochrome for low light.
M11 monochrome.
M11 monochrome is
100%.
unbeatable. That camera is a monster in low light. Of course, it's only black and white, so yeah.
And no video. And
Or
no
autofocus,
and
or
no SL
stabilization, or weather
lenses.
sealing. Yeah, it's a totally different animal.
But that is the current top dog for low light performance.
Is it possible to switch off the top display? I guess like the light, like the top.
I don't
light
think
is-
so. I don't think I don't even think you could change the brightness on it. Let me look. I don't think so. It's a good question.
We switch it off or switch it
I think
Just
they should
switch it off. Yeah, like just have
like a
no-
discrete mode?
Uh,
It's not very bright. Like even at night, it's not going to illuminate much. Well, Josh is
yeah,
looking.
I don't see anything to adjust the top screen on here. I mean, I get why you're asking, but no, sadly no.
Yeah. I think that is it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're right on schedule,
There
so
were a lot of-
Amazing.
we will probably do another episode, a little bit expanding more on the L mount system in general, covering more about the things we didn't have time to test for the SL3S, like the autofocus and the video and
Yeah, exactly.
whatever. So our next show is February 22nd, if my memory serves, right? Is that a
I believe
Saturday?
that is correct.
So definitely keep an eye out. And please, obviously, continue to ask us questions because we're going to need to know what everybody wants to know so we can cover that in our next SL3S, SL3 episode. And if you have an SL3, an SL2, an SL2S, a Q3, Q343, or an M11 variant, please update your firmware between December and now. We saw some pretty significant updates. They're all on red.forum, so you can definitely check them out there. Yeah, because you know I'm a big stickler for firmware. Like it's my whole life, basically.
We should make a quick
What do we got?
announcement. We had a cancellation for our Lisbon Street
Oh,
Photography
nice. Let
Festival
me pull it up.
and also for Faroe Islands. So it's unusual that like these trips were filled up, and
Yeah, so we want to go to the screen, Jose?
we had some last minute.
Yeah, so we had a cancellation for the Faroe Islands, which is in August. So we got one spot left for that. And then one spot left for the Lisbon workshop, which is coming up. So if you want to hang out in Lisbon, it's
Street Photography Workshop.
going to be sweet.
One spot left.
Everything else sold out, sold out, sold out, sold out.
Well, and there is spots though for if you look up there for
Oh,
for
from
Moab,
Moab. Yeah, sorry. I didn't.
which will I am almost 100% we will be using SL3Ss for that. So
Yes.
the shot that you see there, actually, yeah, that was shot with an SL2S.
Nice.
Yeah, because Colin shot that.
Right. Cool. Well, I think we've covered it. You want to start us off?
One last.
Oh my goodness. More
Oh,
questions.
okay.
Okay, don't
Very
start us off.
fast, very fast. Is the SL3S is it quieter than the SL3?
It's the
Same.
Same shutter, as far as we know.
I mean, they're both silent if you put them on an electronic.
Exactly. They both make the same sound if you drop them. But
Don't say that. Don't say that.
all right, sign us off.
All right, be sure to get your merch.
That's right.
Because it depends.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, and all the good things. It goes without saying, the best way to support us, if you like what we do and appreciate the content that we put out, you can do it in a couple ways. You can like the video. That's the easiest one. Second easiest, subscribe to the channel because we're like so close. We like round numbers. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bell so you know when we post new content. And of course, if you really want to help us out and support the channel in the most significant way you can, is you can make your purchases at Leica Store Miami because that is what pays the bills for this.
That's right.
We offer this as a free service for everyone with no strings attached. But if we want to keep the studio lights on and
Well, David needs to buy more cables.
I need to buy more cables.
David needs to buy more
and we need to upgrade to SL3Ss. So
yes, keep the order
come
coming.
on, just keep them coming. So you can help us out that way. And of course, you can deal with us if you want to go and learn about photography hands-on and you want to travel with me or any of my colleagues. You should definitely check out our workshop programs. We are always going places and doing amazing things. Sometimes even Jose goes too. That's right.
Yes, I do.
He does. So you can travel with us. Be sure to check out red.forum.com for the latest Leica news, firmware updates, technical articles, Lightroom presets, etc. Even our latest YouTube stuff is on there now. So be sure to check out the website, keep it bookmarked. And I think that is about it. Big thanks to Josh, as always. Thanks to Jose. Thanks to you guys for tuning in on your Saturday evening or whenever you're watching this, because you can always watch anytime in the future. We do archive all of our Camera Talk videos in full glorious 4K for your viewing pleasure at your convenience. And we are also available as a podcast and on Apple News and other places too. So until February 22nd,
That's right.
we will see you in the next video. And be sure to check back. We might be posting cool stuff before that. All right. And have a great rest of the weekend. Happy New Year. Happy holidays. And
See you next time.
happy photography. See you next time.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye, guys.